Welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV, the live TV show all about the legal aspects of your business to help educate you on complex legal terms in an easy to understand manner, to help understand why you need to do certain things in your business from a legal point of view, and to help you develop a plan for the future. Our mission at Business Legal Lifecycle is to help empower all small to medium-sized businesses around the world to get access to legal advice so that they can help build their communities and make the world a better place. Did you know that any business owner is on average 7 months away from losing everything? That is the average time it takes from a successful business to fold when an aspect of their business is not set up correctly. Have you ever wanted to get legal advice but didn't understand what was going on? Do you feel like there is a divide between lawyers and their clients? Then this TV show is for you. It is all about empowering you and your business with the knowledge and tools to ensure that this doesn't happen to you. Business Legal Lifecycle TV delivers a twice-weekly show focusing on the legal aspects of your business. At lunchtime on Mondays, we present Fast Fix Monday, a quick 5 to 10 minute show that will give you some actionable steps to consider for the week for your business. And at lunchtime on Wednesdays, we present our in-depth show of between 30 minutes and an hour, where we go through complicated legal aspects of your business in a simple to understand, plain English manner. And whether that is through educational pieces or interviews with experts in their fields.
Afternoon everyone, and welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV. I'm Craig Mason, one of the founders, and I have with me Jeremy. Say hello, Jeremy.
Hi everyone, hope you're having a great day.
Thank you for joining us today. Today is our Wednesday show, and at the moment we're talking about insolvency and winding up, and we're lucky today to have someone in the industry come on and be interviewed and share their wealth of knowledge with our listeners or viewers. So today, the person is Hank de Jonge. Now, he is the director and founder of Jonge Read. He's got extensive experience and a varied business career, as well as holding a senior management position in a top 100 company in a previous role. So within his business experience, he's bought and sold numerous businesses. So he's got a lot of information that he can share with our listeners. That's given him a unique insight into business and finance matters, as well as project management skills. He established Jonge Read in 2006, and he's passionate about delivering comprehensive advice for individuals and company directors experiencing financial distress. So that's what we're talking about this month. Obviously, companies that aren't traveling so well in most instances. So Hank's got experience about dealing with those sorts of companies. He always strives to achieve the best possible outcome for his clients and key stakeholders when navigating the complicated insolvency framework. So he does care. He's got clear communication and straightforward advice. He's helped hundreds or thousands of businesses, in the most effective way possible through restructuring, asset protection, and insolvency strategies. Importantly, Hank is a member of the Turnaround Management Association and is a certified turnaround analyst. So if you know everything about that industry, you want someone that's part of that association or a certified turnaround analyst. So Jeremy, what are the listeners or viewers going to get out of the interview today?
Yeah, so Hank's someone that I've known for quite a while, and we've actually just done a seminar series around Queensland about various insolvency issues, and we're going to talk about some of that stuff today. We're going to talk about his history and how he got into the insolvency business. We're going to talk about insolvency generally, and also we're going to go through the Phoenix activities. And what actually is Phoenix activity and where people think, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. I think is probably the main thing that Hank talks about. We're also going to talk about some new changes with Safe Harbour and the legislation around there. So look, Hank's a really interesting guy. He knows a lot of his stuff. So please enjoy my interview with Hank de Jonge. Welcome, Hank, to Business Legal Lifecycle TV and our podcast.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. Lovely to be here today.
Excellent. So, Hank, just wanted to start off a bit about you and your business. Can you give us a bit more about your history and how you got into the insolvency turnaround business?
Sure, Jeremy. It's really quite an interesting story, and it's one that I'm quite passionate about. I was buying and selling small business most of my life, and I actually purchased a business probably about close to 20 years ago now, and I dealt in the souvenir industry, and we had quite a successful operation. We turned over around $6 million a year. Unfortunately, we had September 11 come along, which had a direct effect on our business, and due to the drop down in international tourism into Australia, we had a situation where our turnover dropped to probably about 3 million. Unfortunately, our overheads were set at 4.5, and we're in a situation where we were clearly had a major issue. I had a really good accountant and really good lawyer, but neither of them were insolvency experts. And what I really wanted to know was, no bullshit ways of how can I deal with this situation the best way possible? How can I save the house? How can I save the car? How can I save my business? So I went and chatted with these guys, but unfortunately they weren't able to give me that specialist insolvency advice that I needed. Yep. They ended up introducing me to an insolvency practitioner, and this gentleman certainly knew the answers. And when I sat down and spoke with him, and I asked him how I could move assets around, he was saying to me, listen, I can't give you that advice, because as an insolvency practitioner, he had an obligation to represent creditors, not the director or the individual personally. So I guess I went through a company liquidation and subsequently personal bankruptcy, and going through that, I found it extremely draining emotionally, as well as taxing on needing the best advice. So I decided to set up a firm that specialised in doing nothing but helping company directors with the best strategy to deal with these difficult situations and to get out of those the best way possible. And that's what Jonge Read's about, is just really, really good strategy, along with that emotional support to help directors through that situation to get the best result.
Yep. Yep. So you've been running this business since 2006. So you've obviously got a lot of experience in the industry. How do you think that's helped you to where you are now in 2018?
Oh, I think our industry is ever changing, like any industry, I guess, and there's different rules and different regulations that are set up along the way. Our firm now employs around close to 30 people, but a lot of our senior staff are ex-insolvency practitioners, are accountants, ex-senior business bankers. So what we've got is just so much experience within our team, and that helps us in identifying the best way forwards for our client. But look, our industry is changing like everyone else's, and we need to be on top of these changes. And with our background and our team's background, we've got the ability to do that.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, experience is very important, and especially, as you say, in an ever-changing world. We'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, that's an excellent point. So let's move over into insolvency, and can you talk us through the type of work that a turnaround specialist actually does, and maybe also include the insolvency process in there as well?
Sure. I think for us, no two jobs are the same. Every situation's different, and every client's requirements are different. Our work would generally, probably, I'd say maybe 70% of our files do end up in some type of formal insolvency, whether it be bankruptcy or a company liquidation or a voluntary administration with a deed of company arrangement. However, some of our files don't. Some of our files are negotiations with banks and workouts with banks or with creditors. We're finding that banks generally over the last 5 years are becoming much more amenable to sensible workout strategies, and we see that as being a change from 5 years ago, where they were constantly looking at the immediate appointment of a receiver or a receiver manager. But now banks are much more amenable to listen to good, sensible workout proposals, and I guess we do a lot of that type of work. So I guess for us, every job's different. We try to spend time with the client, get an idea of where they're at, what they're trying to achieve, and from there we base our strategies based on what they're trying to achieve. So whether it be a negotiation with creditors or taking advantage of the insolvency framework, that depends on a case-by-case basis.
You said something interesting there that I just wanted to unpack a bit. You said, what the client actually wants. Do you find often that they know what they want, or is that something that you have to help them develop through the strategies that you work with them?
It's interesting. We'll have a client come and see us, and they might be in a situation where they've had a one-off event. It's an embezzlement from an employee, for instance, or a weather affected some type, or a flood. They're a one-off event where you can look at that and go, well, hang on, the business generally is a good business, and it's worth saving, and it's worth continuing, and the director's passionate about that business. But sometimes it's a situation where the business is no longer profitable, where there is no future for the business, and in that case, it needs to be looked at in a different format to shut the operation down. So I guess that's what I mean by having a look at that, understanding what the director wants. Does the director want to go home? Has the director had enough? And quite often that might be the case, where they've just simply burnt out, and what they want to do is go home, get a job, and get out of the mess that they're in the best way possible. So we'll custom make our strategy to suit that client.
Yep, and that's where you project manage the people through. So you project manage them from the beginning, from when you start talking to them. You're project managing their whole situation all the way through. That'd be fair to say.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeremy. And that's what differentiates us from accountants and lawyers and insolvency practitioners, for that matter. Our service is very, very refined. When we put together a strategy for a client, that strategy might be, it might take us 3 to 4 months to implement that strategy. And we assign an account manager to that file. And that account manager works the client through that step by step by step, and helps them manage and implement our strategy. So it's very, very much an intensive care service where our firm works that client through that file every step of the way. So it is very, very much project management, and I guess that's the way that I like to describe our firm. Is that's what we are. We're project managers, and we're project managing our client through an insolvency event, is really to get out of that the best way possible.
Excellent. Yeah. You and I recently completed a bit of a roadshow around Queensland for your series, and one of the things, and one of the reasons I wanted to get you on for April 2018 was one of the things that you talked about in those seminars was around Phoenix activity. And I think that there's a lot of negativity and a lot of bad press that goes into pre-insolvency advice, because people think that, to use the word dodgy, advice is being given where, and the Phoenix, the companies have been phoenixed, and that's an illegal activity. One of the things that you guys talked about in that seminar series was about the attitude and the change, and some clarification from the ASIC and ATO about what actually Phoenix activity is. Can you walk us through what they said and what the different types of Phoenix activity actually are?
I certainly can, Jeremy. Phoenix activity's obviously been around for a long time, and ASIC and the ATO have never really identified what an illegal Phoenix transaction is, and that's made it very, very difficult. However, just recently, and as of last year, there was an announcement made by AFSA and by the ATO, and it identified basically 3 types of Phoenixes. And that is commercial necessity, problematic, and illegal. Now, this is the first time that really this has been brought to the surface, and it's terrific that it has done, because the ATO and ASIC have identified in that presentation that commercial necessity Phoenixes are quite okay, and that they are a requirement, and that they are something that is required, and if done properly is quite okay. And doing them properly, I mean that they have got a goodwill valuation, that they have got a plant and equipment valuation, that there is a sale contract transferring those assets, and that full consideration is paid by the purchasing entity. And if all of those things are done and done right, then that type of Phoenix activity is quite legal and is quite acceptable. When we talk about problematic and illegal Phoenix activity, therefore we're talking about that's where we get some issues. And with problematic, we're talking about situations where a company director might Phoenix or sell the assets a number of times over in a relatively short period of time, and that's clearly wrong, and understandably so. However, what ASIC and the ATO are firmly focused on are the illegal Phoenix activity, and that's clearly where a director is doing this constantly, and it's part of their business model. Now, we as a firm do not get involved in problematic or illegal Phoenix activity. We will certainly help a company director in relation to doing a legal business restructure, where fair consideration is paid, and that's certainly not an issue for us as a firm.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so I think it's great to see some actual guidance as to what those things actually mean, because there has been, there's been so much confusion and so much hysteria, I think, around Phoenixing and thinking the whole thing was illegal. So I think that's great. So let's move on. So obviously you've acted for a lot of business owners who have actually had their companies go into liquidation or where they've gone bankrupt. Can you give us some key insights that you might have seen that when people make mistakes, it forces them into bankruptcy or having their company wound up?
Sure. Look, I think a lot of it's business failure is due to a number of different reasons. Poor management obviously is one that we see all the time. However, quite often, as I said before, it could be a one-off event that's caused an issue as well. I think the biggest concern that we face is that clients are not quick enough to react when there is a problem. The sooner that we can get involved and the sooner that we can help a client, the better the outcome is for that client. And I guess if there's anything that we'd like to get across to our referrers, predominantly accountants and lawyers, is that the sooner a client picks up the phone and talks to us, the better the outcome's going to be, because the different avenues that are available to a company director. Yeah, the ostrich approach does not work in business, does it? It really does not, and especially not in the insolvency space. Yeah. Time is so precious. Absolutely, absolutely. So, what can you give us some examples? You obviously don't have to use any names. We protect the innocent here on BLL TV. But can you give us some examples of where you've helped someone, just so I guess the viewers and the listeners can see practically the kind of thing that you do and how you help people in those kind of situations? Sure. We quite often, as I said to you earlier, we've have a business owner that comes and sees us that has an insurmountable tax position or an insurmountable creditor position due to a one-off event. Okay, we can, in that situation, if the business is a solid business and has got some good bones to it, we can have a look at doing a business restructure. Yep. And by doing a business restructure, we would look at obtaining a valuation on the goodwill, on the plant equipment, and selling those assets across to a new entity. The advantage of that is obviously the business can transition across to a new entity, and as long as the new entity is paying fair commercial price for those assets, then that can often bring finality to a company that's got an insurmountable unsecured creditor position. So that is something that we look at reasonably regularly. Yeah. Obviously, I'll give you another example. We met with a client the other day, and this gentleman had was an older gentleman and had passed retirement age, had been working in the fruit industry all his life at one of the major markets, and had decided that he wanted to buy a fruit shop. And he bought a fruit shop, had been operating that for around 2 years, and unfortunately was throwing about $10,000 a month into the business from his superannuation. The disadvantage, of course, was he was depleting his superannuation. He came in to see us. We were able to sit down with him, have a look at it, and make an honest assessment. It was much better for this gentleman to cease trading the business, to call it a day, to go home, stop putting money out of his super into this business, and to do a liquidation. So I guess for us, it's helping clients identify different angles, different avenues, and then guiding them through that path.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I think that's very important and very necessary for people who are in that situation, because as I always like to say, you don't know what you don't know, and this is a space that you hope you never actually get into, but if you do, you need someone to actually help you through it, and that's where you guys do such a great job.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk about the other change that about safe harbour. Yeah, people probably heard that terminology around, and there's probably a lot of misunderstanding. Well, I know there's a lot of misunderstanding about what that actually means. So, can you tell us a little about what safe harbour is and how we can, it can actually be used in helping someone in a company winding up situation?
Sure. Well, safe harbour is I think is quite a good change that's been brought to been brought to light. I think the advantage of safe harbour is predominantly around insolvent trading. And I guess when a company director is trading a company and experiences some hard times, and he goes off and meets with some professionals, the answer is always, okay, be very, very careful. You could be trading whilst insolvent, and if you trade whilst insolvent, you can become personally liable for any of the debts that are incurred whilst you're trading insolvent, which is obviously a major concern to a company director.
Yes.
Now, in theory, the number of times that an insolvent trading claim is brought against a company director, and it's not a very commonplace transaction. However, if a director does have substantial assets, and a insolvency practitioner can see a large benefit in pursuing an insolvent trading claim, well then obviously then they do run a risk. I think putting it in practice, I think we have had a client that came and saw us not so long ago, and this lady had a cafe, and this cafe was in a prominent location on the Gold Coast. She was in a situation where we had a secured financier in there. The business loan was secured against a personal home, so if she was to go into liquidation immediately, the loss to her was about $300,000, which she would have to pay from proceeds from her home, either refinance or so on. I guess by using safe harbour, which we were able to do in this case, we were able to determine that if she was allowed to trade for another 4 or 5 months, that the outcome would be substantially better, and that trading for that 4 or 5 month period would have allowed her to be able to generate income through a busy tourist season, and would have allowed her to be able to obtain a sale of the business. Now, as I said, the site that the lady had was a prominent site, so the most rather than a sale of the business it was more that there were quite a few restaurant owners that would have been happy to take over that site. So what we were able to do with that was we were able to document a safe harbour strategy, and the safe harbour strategy was clearly showing that if she could trade for that extra 4 or 5 months, the return to creditors would be improved by about $180,000. Due to the fact that we were able to do that sale and generate cash, which was what happened, and at the end of the day, the business was sold. and the company was ultimately liquidated.
Yep.
But by using safe harbour, that loss that the lady actually incurred was reduced by about 180 grand.
Wow.
So she was able to borrow the 120 shortfall against her home. So I think what's positive here is that she was able to do that and trade over that 4-month period without the fear of being held liable for an insolvent trading claim.
Yep.
It's I guess so. I'm quite passionate about safe harbour. I think it'll be a very good tool, and it will certainly make a difference to the landscape.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that a lot of people, a question I get quite often in this space is there a precedent form for a safe harbour plan, or is it something that you need to basically put together as based on your experience and you know, your knowledge of the industry?
I guess that we've got a precedent within our firm where we supply a specific report. Yep. And we analyse the returns that would be available in immediate liquidation opposed to the returns that would be available in our safe harbour plan. I guess that as part of our management of that is we do meet with the client monthly, and we do review the plan based on well, to confirm that we're actually moving in the right direction, to confirm that the plan still is getting the best return, because the minute that plan is not getting a better return than insolvency, then or then an immediate liquidation is the minute that safe harbour protection finishes.
Yeah, I probably wasn't as clear as I meant to be. I meant there's no government form and prescribed format for what a safe harbour plan looks like, is there? It's something that you have to put together based on that, and you've put it together based on your experience and your knowledge of the industry.
That's correct, Jeremy.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I guess my point that I'm trying to make to the listeners and viewers is you need to go and see someone who knows what they're talking about, because it's a complicated thing, and it's not just filling in a form and ticking a few boxes. It's actually quite a complicated thing to put together, and there's no case law or any legislation that guides you on what you need to do. It's basically, you know, we're setting now what that law is going to look like going into the future.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. So Hank, obviously, you know, with all industries, and we kind of touched on this at the beginning, there's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of disruption going on in industries. What do you see as disruption in your space going forward over, say, the next 5 years?
I think the pre-insolvency space is certainly one that's been, as you pointed out earlier, has been tarnished by some bad operators in our space, and you quite often see that, unfortunately, on the likes of Four Corners and so on. Our industry really needs to stamp out these bad operators. Yep. And I guess I've always been very, very keen for our space to become under some type of regulation, because it's really, really what's needed. So I guess as time, I'm very proud of our firm that we have got a particularly good reputation out there. However, I think regulation will really be a turning point in our space. I think our space is one that's around for a long time, and it's really, really required for company directors and so on to be able to seek that right advice, yep, which our firm can offer. I think certainly I see disruption within our space, basically due to these bad operators. Yep. And I think until legislation comes into place controlling our industry, that won't change. Is
regulation on the cards? Are the government agencies talking about that at all?
Look, not to any great degree. Yep. Not to any great degree.
Okay, excellent. Well, Hank, I think everyone who's listening and watching to this would have got a lot of value out of this. Is it all right if we move into our quick fire question round?
Sure.
All right, so the first question is, and all I want you to do is just answer with the first thing that comes into your mind. Okay. Fair enough. There's no right or wrong answers. So the first one is, what's the current book that you're reading?
I'm reading Elon Musk's book at the moment for the second time. I find that just a phenomenal read, and just an amazing businessman.
Yeah, excellent. What's it called?
Look, I knew you were going to ask me that. I honestly can't remember off the top of my head.
That's all right.
It's his autobiography. I think there's only the one.
Yeah, that probably would be only one autobiography for him so far. Probably some more in the future.
That's it.
So the second question is, what book do you think every business owner should actually read?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I'm always quite fascinated by Richard Branson. I think his story is quite amazing.
Yep.
And his initial autobiography, I think, is a particularly good read.
Yep.
But I think often with business, we've got to sometimes attack hurdles and overcome hurdles. And when you look at business people like Richard Branson and Elon Musk, for that matter, they're the sort of people that just don't give up.
Yep.
And I think their stories are strong, and hence the fact that I like those two mentors, so to speak.
Yeah, excellent. I think that's Losing My Virginity or Finding My Virginity. There's a few of them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I read that one quite a while ago. It's one I want to revisit because it's a very good book.
It is.
And the last question, if you could give advice to your younger self, what would that advice be?
Advice to my younger self, I guess not sticking your head in the sand, is dealing with issues when they come up, because I think as a younger business person, I think I did that too much.
Yep.
And I think having the guts to deal with something as and when it comes up is really, really paramount in business success.
Great advice. I couldn't agree more. That's excellent. Excellent. So, Hank, as I said, thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate it, and I know that everyone watching and listening to this would have got a great lot of value out of it. Can you, if we missed anything that you want to, tell the people today that you think is important?
I think we've covered it off pretty well, Jeremy. I think we're passionate about helping any business owners in any type of financial difficulty. So I guess if I could get anything across is look, if anyone is suffering any financial difficulty or has clients that are, we're the right place to come to for us to have a look at their situation, come up with some with some good options on moving forward. So.
Sounds good. And can I just ask finally, where can people reach you if they'd like to discuss anything further? Our telephone number, Jeremy, is I think we'll make that available as part of this. I'd assume. Absolutely. Yeah. We'll put it on the show notes. But and what about your website as well?
The website is www.djra.com.au.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll link all that up in the show notes so that people can get in contact with you if they need to.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Once again, thank you very much for your time, Hank, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks, Jeremy. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed my interview with Hank de Jonge. Out of this interview, I hope you got a bit more of an understanding about Hank's history and how insolvency practitioners can really help, or be helped, I should say, by turnaround specialists, because they really need to be the ones to be able to give the advice to company and directors before liquidation occurs. I really think that Hank's knowledge comes through in this interview, and that you should see a lot of stuff that's really useful for you if you have yourself or someone else that you know goes into liquidation or has any of those kind of problems. As always, we've got show notes for today's episode. If you go to businesslegallifecycle.com.au/084, you'll find the show notes there. Craig, do you want to finish up?
Yeah. As always, we thank Hank as well for coming on. We know the information is going to be very valuable. Remember to like the video on Facebook or wherever else you might be getting the content, so you can keep updated. As Jeremy said, the show notes will be on there. It's show number 84, so we're well on our way to show 100. And we've really enjoyed our time so far, and hopefully we're in for another 100 shows after show 100. So thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you again for Fast Fix Monday next Monday. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.